The Televised Tragedy. Benny "Kid" Parrott stepped into the ring at Madison Square Garden on March 24, 1962. The Cuban welterweight was defending his title for the second time against Emil Griffith. What the millions of Americans watching on ABC's Fight of the Week didn't know was that they were about to witness a death in real time. The tension between the fighters had escalated at the weigh-in when Parrott taunted Griffith with an slur and a feminine gesture. In the conservative 1960s, this was more than trash talk. It was a deliberate attempt to humiliate. Griffith, who privately lived a double life, simmered with rage but said nothing. For 11 rounds, the fight was competitive but brutal. Parrott, known for his incredible ability to absorb punishment, had already taken dozens of solid hits to the head. By the 12th round, his brain was likely already swelling inside his skull. At 1 minute and 19 seconds into the final round, Griffith trapped Parrott in the corner. What followed was a barrage of 29 consecutive punches in 7 seconds. Parrott was pinned against the ropes, his arms draped helplessly over them. He could not fall. He could not escape. Referee Ruby Goldstein, positioned at the wrong angle, couldn't see that Parrott's eyes had gone vacant. Each punch drove Parrott's head back into the padded corner post. Neurologists later explained that each impact caused his brain to slam against the inside of his skull, tearing blood vessels and crushing delicate tissue. When Goldstein finally intervened, Parrott slumped to the canvas, unconscious. He never woke up. For 10 days, he lay in a coma at Roosevelt Hospital while his brain continued to swell. Doctors performed emergency surgery to relieve the pressure, but the damage was irreversible. On April 3, 1962, Benny Parrott died from massive brain hemorrhaging. He was 25 years old. The death that caused more deaths. Duk-Koo Kim entered the ring at Caesar's Palace on November 13, 1982, with a note in his hotel room that read, "Live or die, I'll be a champion." The 23-year-old South Korean challenger had no idea how prophetic those words would become. His opponent, Ray Boom Boom Mancini, was the WBA lightweight champion and a rising American star. The bout was scheduled for 15 brutal rounds, a standard that would soon change because of what was about to unfold. From the opening bell, both fighters engaged in relentless exchanges. By the later rounds, Kim's face was visibly swollen, his eyes nearly shut. Medical experts would later note that his brain was already experiencing trauma with each punishing blow. In the 14th round, Mancini connected with a straight right hand to Kim's head. The punch wasn't particularly different from the hundreds that came before it, but it was precisely placed. Kim fell backward, his head striking the canvas with a thud. He managed to rise at the count of 8, but referee Richard Green stopped the fight seconds later. Kim walked to his corner under his own power. Then, in the dressing room, he collapsed. Neurologists determined a subdural hematoma was forming. Blood vessels had ruptured between his brain and skull. The pressure was building inside his head with each passing minute. Emergency surgery was performed to relieve the pressure, but Kim never regained consciousness. His brain had been compressed against the inside of his skull for too long. For 5 days, he lay motionless on life support as his organs slowly shut down. On November 18th, Duk-Koo Kim died. His mother, unable to cope with the loss, chose to leave this world herself 3 months later. In July 1983, referee Richard Green, haunted by his decision not to stop the fight earlier, also chose to leave. One boxing match had claimed 3 lives. The champion's last drive. Salvador Sanchez was at the peak of his career on August 12, 1982. At just 23 years old, the Mexican fighter had already defended his WBC featherweight title 9 times. Boxing analysts considered him one of the most gifted technicians in the sport's history. Many predicted he would become the greatest featherweight of all time. That morning, Sanchez was behind the wheel of his Porsche 928, a high-performance sports car capable of reaching speeds over 160 miles per hour. The vehicle featured a 4.5-liter V8 engine that produced over 230 horsepower. It was a machine built for speed, but demanded perfect control from its driver. Sanchez was driving along Federal Highway 57 near Querétaro, Mexico. The straight, open road tempted drivers to push their limits. Witnesses later reported seeing the distinctive silver Porsche traveling at extremely high velocity, its engine screaming as it accelerated. At approximately 3:30 in the morning, Sanchez's Porsche approached a curve at a speed far beyond what the road conditions allowed. In the darkness, a large freight truck appeared, traveling in the opposite direction. The truck driver later stated he saw headlights approaching at an impossible speed. In a split second, control was lost. The Porsche crossed the center line. Physics took over as 3,000 pounds of German engineering collided head-on with the 20-ton truck. The impact was catastrophic. The front end of the Porsche collapsed instantly. The steering column was driven back into the driver's compartment. Metal fragments tore through the cabin. The sudden deceleration from over 100 miles per hour to 0 happened in less than 1/10 of a second. For Sanchez, death was instantaneous. The force of impact caused massive internal trauma. His aorta was severed from his heart. His skull fractured in multiple places. The same reflexes that made him exceptional in the ring had no time to respond. The Premonition. Sugar Ray Robinson woke up in a cold sweat the night before his June 24, 1947 bout with Jimmy Doyle. The world welterweight champion had experienced something that shook him to his core, a vivid dream where he struck Doyle with a single punch, watching helplessly as his opponent collapsed and never rose again. Robinson immediately contacted his manager, telling him he couldn't go through with the fight. The dream felt too real, too prophetic. Boxing promoters, faced with the potential loss of a major championship event, brought in a Catholic priest to speak with the troubled fighter. The priest assured Robinson it was merely a dream, nothing more. The bout would proceed as scheduled. Jimmy Doyle, a 22-year-old rising contender from Los Angeles, knew nothing of Robinson's nightmare as he climbed through the ropes at Cleveland Arena. Medical examiners had cleared him to fight, though they were unaware of his history of previous concussions, information that would have disqualified him immediately. For 7 rounds, Doyle performed admirably against the champion. Many consider the greatest pound-for-pound fighter in history. But in the 8th round, Robinson connected with a precise left hook to Doyle's head. The punch landed just behind Doyle's right ear, at the base of his skull. Doyle dropped to the canvas immediately. At first, it seemed like any other knockout. The referee began his count, but Doyle made no attempt to rise. Ringside physicians rushed in when they noticed his pupils were fixed and dilated, signs of severe brain trauma. Doyle was carried from the ring on a stretcher, still unconscious. At the hospital, surgeons discovered massive bleeding inside his brain. The impact had ruptured blood vessels that were already weakened from previous fights. As pressure built inside his skull, his brain functions began shutting down one by one. At 11:55 p.m. on June 25th, 17 hours after Robinson's prophetic punch became reality, Jimmy Doyle died without ever regaining consciousness. The Fatal Headbutts. Randy Carver entered the ring on September 12, 1999, with a perfect record of 23 wins, 0 losses. The 26-year-old from Kansas City was considered one of boxing's brightest prospects. His opponent that night at Harrah's Casino was Kabari Salem, an Egyptian fighter with a reputation for using his head as a weapon. From the opening bell, the bout devolved into something that barely resembled boxing. In the first round, Salem drove his skull directly into Carver's face. The referee issued a warning but took no points. Blood began streaming from a cut above Carver's eye. Neurologists later explained that each impact caused microscopic tearing in the delicate tissues connecting his brain to his skull. By the 4th round, Salem had delivered 3 more deliberate headbutts. Each time, the crown of his head crashed into Carver's temple. Ringside physicians noted Carver's increasingly delayed responses between rounds, but allowed the fight to continue. His corner wiped away blood, but couldn't see the damage accumulating inside his skull. In the 6th round, another headbutt opened a second cut. By the 8th round, Carver was visibly disoriented, his balance unsteady. Medical experts would later testify that his brain was already swelling, pressing against the inside of his skull with nowhere to expand. The 9th round brought 2 more headbutts. Still, the referee took no decisive action. Carver absorbed legal punches between the illegal blows, each impact compounding the damage to his brain. Witnesses described him as fighting on instinct alone by this point. In the 10th round, Carver suddenly stiffened and fell backward. His body began convulsing on the canvas. Emergency medical technicians rushed into the ring as he lost consciousness. At the hospital, surgeons discovered massive bleeding throughout his brain. The accumulated trauma from repeated impacts had torn blood vessels beyond repair. On September 14th, after 48 hours on life support, Randy Carver's brain shut down completely. The fatal ride-along. Hector Macho Camacho sat in the passenger seat of a Ford Mustang on the evening of November 20th, 2012. The 50-year-old former champion was known for his flamboyant personality, having won world titles in 3 weight divisions during his prime. His friend Adrian Mojica Moreno was behind the wheel. They were parked outside a small shopping center in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, Camacho's hometown. At approximately 7 o'clock p.m., a gray SUV approached their vehicle. The driver pulled alongside the Mustang's passenger side, where Camacho was seated. From inside the SUV, someone raised a 9mm banana. The assailant pew-pewed multiple times at close range. One bullet struck Moreno in the head and neck, killing him instantly. Another bullet hit Camacho in the left side of his face. The projectile entered just below his jaw, severing his carotid artery and spinal cord before lodging in his right shoulder. Medical experts would later explain that this type of injury causes rapid and massive blood loss. First responders found Camacho unconscious, but still breathing shallowly. Blood filled his airway, making each breath a struggle. His heart rate was dangerously low as paramedics rushed him to Centro Medico Trauma Center in San Juan. Surgeons worked frantically to repair the severed artery, but the bullet had caused extensive damage. With each passing hour, Camacho's brain received less oxygen. By the following morning, doctors detected minimal brain activity. His heart continued beating, but brainstem function was rapidly deteriorating. For 4 days, his family maintained vigil at his bedside. Specialists conducted multiple tests, all confirming the same grim reality. The oxygen deprivation had caused irreversible brain damage. What remained functioning was only the most primitive parts of his brain controlling basic functions. On November 24th, after consulting with neurologists, Camacho's family made the decision to remove life support. At 1:45 a.m., Hector Macho Camacho was pronounced dead. The assailants who pew-pewed him were never apprehended. The heroic bar fight. Al Bummy Davis stood behind the bar at Duty's Tavern in Brownsville, Brooklyn on the night of November 21st, 1945. The 25-year-old boxer had compiled a professional record of 65 wins and 10 losses. He was known for his ferocious style in the ring, once being disqualified for delivering 9 consecutive low blows against former champion Bob Montgomery. At approximately 11:30 p.m., 4 men entered the establishment. They spread out across the room, their intentions immediately clear to those inside. One man stepped forward, pulling a .38 caliber banana from his coat pocket. He demanded that everyone empty their wallets and jewelry onto the bar top. Patrons began to comply, fear freezing them in place. Davis, standing just 6 feet away, watched with a growing anger. The boxer had grown up in the rough Brownsville neighborhood. Despite his career earnings, he had chosen to remain in the community and open this bar for locals. Without warning, Davis lunged across the counter. Witnesses described what happened next as lightning fast. Before the robber could react, Davis connected with a perfect left hook to the man's jaw, the same punch that had knocked out numerous professional fighters. The banana fell to the floor as the man collapsed unconscious. The other 3 robbers immediately drew their own bananas. Davis turned to face them, unarmed and outnumbered. The closest assailant pew-pewed twice. Both bullets missed. Davis moved toward him with the same fearlessness he showed in the ring. That's when the other 2 opened fire. 5 bullets struck Davis in the back at close range. The projectiles tore through his lungs, liver, and heart. He collapsed face down on the floor of his own establishment. Patrons rushed to help as the robbers fled into the night. Despite efforts to stop the bleeding, Davis was beyond medical intervention. His heart, punctured in 3 places, stopped beating within minutes. The culprits were apprehended 2 days later and sentenced to life imprisonment. The tragic anniversary. Diego Corrales revved the engine of his Suzuki motorcycle on the evening of May 7, 2007. The 29-year-old former champion was celebrating. Exactly 2 years earlier, he had fought in what many consider the greatest boxing match of the modern era, coming back from near defeat to knock out Jose Luis Castillo in the 10th round. The motorcycle was a recent purchase, a powerful GSX R1000 capable of accelerating from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just under 3 seconds. With a top speed of over 170 miles per hour, it was one of the fastest production motorcycles available. Corrales was still learning to handle its immense power. At approximately 7:22 p.m., Corrales was traveling northbound on Fort Apache Road in Las Vegas. Traffic cameras later showed his motorcycle moving at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. He weaved between cars, the gap between vehicles sometimes just inches wide. Near the intersection of Fort Apache and Hacienda Avenue, a Chevrolet Tahoe suddenly braked in front of him. Corrales had no time to react. His motorcycle slammed into the rear of the SUV at high velocity. The impact launched his body over the handlebars. Physics took over. His 6-foot-tall frame catapulted through the air at extraordinary speed. He crossed into the southbound lane, directly into the path of oncoming traffic. A Honda Accord struck him at approximately 45 miles per hour. The secondary impact caused catastrophic trauma. His helmet, which witnesses said was not properly secured, tore away on first impact. His unprotected skull fractured in multiple places when he hit the Honda's windshield. His cervical vertebrae separated from the base of his skull. Internal organs ruptured from the blunt force trauma. First responders arrived within minutes, but found no signs of life. The trauma to his brainstem had been immediate and absolute. The man who had survived countless punches in the ring and risen from 3 knockdowns in his most famous fight could not survive the laws of physics. Diego Corrales was pronounced dead at the scene. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.